Welcome back. We're with us this morning to review the papers are broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford and PR and crisis management expert Kevin Craig. Nice to see you both again. And we're going to start off this time with the Express, Kevin. We've just been talking to a striking nurse. That is their subject.
Yeah, and I just thought it was very important because the papers are full of this story today in different ways, different angles. We've talked about one angle earlier. But the Express giving airtime to the government position, warning the nurses, be careful, you know, patients at risk, etc. But I thought it was very important in looking at this story to remember behind this, why are these guys doing it? We just heard very eloquently from the nurse. And we need, the bigger picture is the expenditure of our country. £3 to £4 billion of our money a year on agency nurses, right? That does not make sense. And then you heard just now about the 20% increase in food and the cost of living. There are 7 million on waiting lists. There are 300,000 cancelled operations and procedures. And so we all want, and my mother, I lost her to cancer, and the nurses were amazing, and we all feel nervous, as Lucy said earlier. But the context is some numbers here that should have all of us agitated and bearing in mind next week on polling day.
And Lucy, you know, the other concern, of course, I suppose, is public support for the nurses. From the nurses' point of view, it has been strong, and especially given COVID, how warmly people felt the NHS in their hearts, a lot of people. But do you think that will change if the strikes drag on for months or possibly even years?
Well, it will do if other unions accept their offers. I think the difficulty for Pat Cullen is that the more there are other, admittedly, you know, at different levels, you've got junior doctors, you've got consultants, ambulance workers, but if those unions are accepting the pay offers that they've been given or have negotiated, then it's going to be increasingly difficult for Pat Cullen to hold her line. And particularly if one of her arguments is that actually if you don't pay up or negotiate in a different way, then this could go on till Christmas. That could actually really start to change public opinion.
We shall see.
Don't you think, though, that this angle of what is the government doing about billions of money on agency nursing is equally powerful, maybe?
No, because ultimately I think what people will decide on is how is this affecting me? Is my mum's hip replacement being postponed for the 7th time? That's what it's really going to come down to, whereas an argument about how much money the government is spending on agency staff is definitely part of the mix. But if it doesn't really impact you because you're not seeing the invoice for that, but you are seeing how much pain your mother is in, that's the moment at which things start to become much more personal.
Let's see.
We shall see. Your choice next, Lucy, and it's in the Times, it's page 4. This is about visa centres for the Sudanese.
Yes, I mean, the conflict in Sudan, which appeared to flare up so dramatically, so quickly, left so many situations underprepared. We've already had a lot of coverage about flights and whether there were countries who were caught napping. But there's one particular story which is about the fact that there was a visa centre in Khartoum and it closed, naturally, because the conflict was so traumatic and dangerous. But there were lots of people who had their passports in the visa centre and they can't get onto British-manned flights if they haven't got their passport. And what this article is highlighting is quite how dramatic it is for a lot of people. They go to try to get onto a flight, they're turned away. One particular gentleman in particular got shot at after he was turned back from one of these flights. And this man in particular has a wife and children living in the UK. There are other people in the article that are mentioned who've got loved ones that they're trying to join. And they've also got other documentation. So what they're asking the Foreign Office to be so supportive about is saying, why does it have to be just this passport or just this visa if I've got so many other documents? If I've got scans of my passport, I can show you my marriage licence, I can show you other documentation. Why is that not enough? At the moment, all these people are being left behind because, no fault of their own, the visa centre has been closed.
OK. Kevin, you've picked a story in The Guardian today. It's picking up of our interview, Sophie Ridge's interview with Keir Starmer yesterday. And this is, he's faced criticism from quite a lot of quarters, hasn't he, about these adverts which lay the blame at Rishi Sunak's door for all failings of the Conservative Party over the last 13 years. And he's being asked, should we judge him by the same
Yeah.
the same yardstick.
And I thought it was a very interesting article in The Guardian because, you know, your colleague Sophie didn't pull any punches at the weekend. It was a really good political interview. But Starmer is very clear, you know, he's having brought Labour back from the dead and made the party electable again. He is causing controversy by making sure that he attempts to hold Rishi Sunak to account, not just for being Prime Minister and lately, but as part of a 13-year narrative of, you know, 5 Prime Ministers in the Conservative Party leading the government. And yes, it's led to robust questions back about Keir Starmer's time as a senior civil servant. But I think he's not making any apologies that he's holding Sunak account for policies, and I think it's just really interesting. It was a very robust, challenging political interview, but Starmer's not budging and is making sure that, you know, the Conservative Party can't reinvent the wheel and just forget about the last 13 years in the run-up to general election. Was quite interesting.
Really, how, you know, as a psychologist, how far back do people think when they come and vote? Do people tend to vote on what's close to them at the moment, or do they think back and think back over the last 13 years?
Funnily enough, it's more about what's happening to me right now, which is why lines like, do you feel less well off than you did, is much more coherent. Mm-hmm. We have... it's hard sometimes to have much more abstract thinking to try and think, where was I 13 years ago? When you go into that polling booth, it's very much about, yeah, has my grandmother had the hip operation? Do I have enough money in my pocket? But I think, you know, it's very tricky. If you have an attack ad from Labour to Tory saying, this is what happened under your watch over the past 13 years, the Tories are already coming out saying, well, if you want to play it like that, then we'll start to attack you, Keir Starmer, for things that happened when you were in charge of Crown Prosecution Service.
Well, they'll do that anyway. So but I think Lucy makes a really good point. You know, it's like, is it better? Is anything better than 13 years ago? And you're right, that's got a lot more resonance as a question.
Security, home security. This is an article that you've picked out, Lucy. This is in The Telegraph, and lots of other papers have picked up as well. People are turning to what they're calling DIY security, such as doorbells, cameras and things like that.
Well, again,
what's this about?
I think it speaks to people's insecurities about whether they feel safe in their own home. And one of the reasons why they don't feel safe is because there aren't enough bobbies in the beat and because people don't come and support you if you have had a burglary. And so what you've got is that people have turned to all sorts of things. There's quite sophisticated devices like little cameras in doorbells, but even people, 1 in 3 people under the age of 30 have installed a CCTV camera near their home. 6% of people have bought a dog, which seems quite a radical way because you've then got to look after the dog. But, you know, there are lots of ways in which people are doing it for themselves. And thankfully, the tech is also helping them with that. But the poll, which has actually been commissioned by the Liberal Democrats, is really highlighting quite how insecure people feel in their communities. And not everyone is going to be able to afford such sophisticated tech to keep their homes safe. But it just shows how fearful people are.
It does, doesn't it? We're out of time already. We've roared through them, but we've got lots more to come next hour. Thank you so much for bringing us through those, Kevin and Lucy. Thanks a lot.